Welcome to Infinite Perfect, a periodic retrograde amnesia podcast series built to assemble the devastating anecdotal happenstance that connects one of the hosts to their favorite games.
Episode 1, Watch It Move, featuring Burning Rangers.
Have you ever returned to an older game simply because you like to see it move? I don't specifically mean a fondness for a game's art direction, like why you may pick up Yoshi's Island or Jet Set Radio. Games like that made stylistic choices that will render them beautiful forever. Their look alone will mesmerize most players of any age or era until the end of time. But no, I'm talking about playing a game to witness the spectacle of the raw, technical power on display from a console with no business showcasing such splendor. This phenomenon was an easy trick to observe in the 16 and 32-bit days when programming wizardry or extra chips inside the game cartridge could flash some next-level shit that your brain, just 10 seconds ago, considered impossible. Stuff like the Mode 7 scaling and rotating effects that powered F-Zero. Things like the first time you saw primitive polygons pushing across a 16-bit system like Star Fox on Super Nintendo or Virtua Racing on Genesis. Maybe it was Final Fantasy VII's seamless transition from cutscene to gameplay when Cloud jumped off that train in Midgar. It could have even been something as simple as the tower background rotating in pseudo 3D space in Kirby's Adventure on the original Nintendo. In those days, it took zero knowledge of how games were made for a player to recognize when a game was doing shit its contemporaries could not do. It's why 8-year-olds knew the word graphics and debated the merit of those graphics at recess. In the 90s, wonder and astonishment were valuable measures of a game's quality. I can still play Star Fox today and remember what it was like when crude polygons felt like actual magic. That point of view, as rose-tinted as the glasses may be, helps us remember what it felt like when a game seemed to be far ahead of its original time and place. And that is what brings me to Burning Rangers, a game I like looking at all the time. To the untrained eye of 2023, Burning Rangers is a crude depiction of blocky humanoid figures stumbling through a mess of fluorescent polygons while shooting flame-retardant lasers at pockets of sprite-based flames. But that is not what I see. To my eyes, Burning Rangers is a polygonal platformer performing in a polygonal latitude on a console that had little business conducting many of its operations in open 3D space. The Sega Saturn barely handled polygons, and it certainly wasn't good at showcasing polygonal characters and polygonal worlds. If that wasn't enough of a challenge, the fire in Burning Rangers was also transparent on a console infamous for its trouble managing transparencies. Practically speaking, and with minimal hyperbole, every second of Burning Rangers is a technical and artistic masterpiece. And some people may take one look at it and conclude that it kind of looks like shit, and I think it's one of the most impressive looking games ever made. The validity of an observation all depends on perspective because your eyes cannot be wrong. We're both looking at the same game, but we have a different brain to tell us what's on display. But let's back up and explain what Burning Rangers is. Released in May of 1998 in North America, it was the third-till-last game released for the Sega Saturn console, and after the original Sonic the Hedgehog and Nights into Dreams, the third full game developed by Sega's unified Sonic team. On concept, you play as either Tillis or Sho, two new recruits to the titular Burning Rangers, an elite team of firefighters from the future, born into a world of anime archetypes and platforming challenges. A fun question to ask is, why did Sonic Team want to make a firefighting game instead of a Sonic game for the Sega flagship platform that did not have a true Sonic game? It's similar to the question of why in the world did Sonic Team want to make a game featuring an androgynous purple jester flying around children's dreams and beating up nightmares. Of course, I'm referencing Nights into Dreams, the game made after Yuji Naka left Sega Technical Institute in 1994 and reunited with Naoto Oshima in Japan to reform that original Sonic team. Game development from design to programming is, after all, a creative industry, and making Sonic games for 5 years sounds creatively frustrating. I get it, sometimes you want to do other stuff like make a solo podcast not specifically talking about RPGs, and release it under the banner of a podcast founded on the idea of talking to someone else about RPGs. Sometimes we need to do new things to maintain some level of sanity. But there are 3 reported reasons why Sonic Team chose to make Burning Rangers. Their previous game, Nights, was famously conceived in part because members of Sega Technical Institute saw Mystère, a Cirque du Soleil show at the Mirage during their weekend trips to Las Vegas, the same trips that inspired Casino Night Zone in Sonic 2. Ideas for Burning Rangers, however, awakened after STI members went on the old Backdraft ride at Universal Studios in California. I would very much like an entire book or long-form article detailing the inspiration the Japanese members of STI took from their time in the Western United States, because it obviously had a tremendous effect on their creative output. I mean, we haven't even talked about Sonic Adventure 2's opening level, which was basically San Francisco. They put San Francisco in a Sonic game. Anyway, Burning Rangers' origins can also be traced back to the pushback against video game violence. In Britain's Sega Saturn magazine, Yuji Naka expressed a desire for the player character to rescue people as opposed to kill people. Along the same lines, Naoto Oshima, the director of Burning Rangers, thought firefighters were an identifiable hero across cultural lines. Furthermore, the theme song of the game, Angels with Burning Hearts, is a nod to the jetpacks worn by the Burning Rangers, which in the haze of fire and the mania of a worried mind can make them appear as angels to the people they're rescuing. The 90s really were a time when video game protagonists, at least in platformers, had pure hearts and noble intentions. Well, other than that genocidal maniac, Mario.
Mario's a fucking psycho.
One of my favorite tweets is from a Shigeru Miyamoto parody account, and that tweet is, "Saw a picture of Mario and Luigi kissing one another online. Please do not do that." That's very funny to me, but it's also consistent with the personal image of our favorite and few Japanese developers, and their handlers have cultivated across their careers. Not the implications of incest or homophobia, but the idea that games are somehow supposed to be fun and fleeting and apolitical and happy and wholesome, and not imagined outside of their context as a game. Anything else feels like a corruption of that idea. I don't agree with that, obviously, but it's how I've always thought of the minds behind 90s Nintendo and Sega games. Side note, at E3 2010, I watched someone in Miyamoto's entourage demo Killzone 3 for him, and I felt embarrassed for our generation and for video games as a whole. Other side note, I liked Killzone 3, that jetpack was good. The final reason why Burning Rangers was made, and this is just my own hypothesis, is that Sonic Team wanted to make a game with actual flight elements across all three axes of movement. Nights into Dreams, and I love Nights, but despite the commercial telling gamers that Nights was the only game that let them fly in 3D,
there's never been a game like Sega Saturn's Nights. Never been a game that's allowed you to fly, fluid and free, in real-time 3D. Never, not anywhere.
did not let anyone actually fly in 3D. The game sure was in 3D space, but Knight's flight path was always fixed to a 2D plane. You were never flying in 3D. You can only guide Knight across the X and Y axis. Burning Rangers, which was created with the Sonic team's so-called Knight's engine, was in open 3D space all the time. And you could kind of fly temporarily with your jetpack. Flight was an idea for a game at the beginning of Sonic Team's time with the Sega Saturn, and it wasn't fully executed until the console itself was marked for execution. By the way, Sonic Team actually made 3 Sonic games for the Sega Saturn. In the Sega Saturn release of Sonic 3D Blast, which itself was a retextured and repackaged port of the Genesis game of the same name made by Traveler's Tales, Sonic Team built 7 3D bonus stages reminiscent of the special stages from Sonic 2. Those are exclusive to the Saturn version of Sonic 3D Blast. There was also Sonic Jam, the Saturn compilation of all 4 Genesis Sonic games. Sonic Jam also included as a bonus Sonic World, a very, very small Sonic open world level that celebrated Sonic's history and doubled as a tech demo for what would become Sonic Adventure. Finally, there was an unlockable Sonic into Dreams fucking ROM hack unlockable in Christmas Nights, the greatest free demo of all time. Burning Rangers is a video game, by the way. It outfits players with a small jetpack, which is good for an acrobatic double jump. You also have a laser gun, which does not lock on to anything, though your blasts do seem to home on to the nearest object. That object is typically the nefarious fires that spontaneously break out across the game's 4 distinct levels. But there are also some angry robots that sometimes patrol around and also suffer damage from your blaster. Putting out fires generates pink crystals, and those crystals power your life bar and power your ability to teleport away survivors. Those survivors are tucked into odd corners of each level. Top to bottom, the campaign lasts about 2.5 hours. As practiced, Burning Rangers can compose a nice Saturday afternoon. Actions, the basic movement mechanics, all have a reasonable degree of difficulty. Burning Rangers is a hard game to control. It's a demanding game to play. No other game moves like this, and no other game controls like this, because it was made back when games just invented new control schemes every time they went into production. Basic momentum is twitchy, and the platforming has a low margin of error. Response and feedback is minimal. There isn't much difference input-wise between flip dodging to the left and right and jumping up to the left or right. Burning Rangers is intended to be played with the Sega Saturn's analog pad, and it's unfortunate if you try to play it with the standard Saturn D-pad. Character movement was not without ambition. There's an auto-jump mechanic months before Ocarina of Time to automatically clear small gaps. Burning Rangers even has a rudimentary cliff edge grab, but neither that nor the auto-jump mechanic gesture toward a modern interpretation of accessibility. They don't make the game easier to play. Proficiency demands repetition, and most players aren't going to be able to enjoy Burning Rangers on a one-and-done run. It's closer to a game like Gun Valkyrie than one may suspect, caught in the paradox of good controls that only feel good after you've spent hours and hours acclimating yourself to their peculiarity. Like driving a car with a manual transmission, control is only fucked if you've had no practice and don't know what you're doing. You have to actually learn how to drive, not only to have fun with it, but just to make the thing work right. Burning Rangers is a Sonic team game, and like Sonic, there are aspects of its design that cannot get away from Sega's arcade sensibilities. If you get hit by fire, you lose your crystals as they explode all over the screen. You've got a little time to gather them back up, and yes, that's exactly like the mechanic with Sonic and his rings. You can also cash in those crystals 5 at a time to teleport away the dozen or so survivors tucked away in each level. That process will take 10 crystals if you have that many, and cashing in all 10 rewards the player with a continue. At the end of each level, you're scored on how many survivors you rescued, how many crystals you retained, the time it took to defeat the boss, and how low you kept the burn limit. If you want all S ranks, you're going to have to carve a path to maximize each category. That burn limit I just mentioned is basically a level timer. I love level timers. And I know timers or imposing any kind of time limit on the player can be a divisive mechanic in many games. In Burning Rangers, there's a percentage and bar graph affixed to the right side of the screen. It will tick up slowly as you play the game, but it can be reduced by putting out any of the fires you come across or by rescuing survivors. But for every 20 points that burn limit goes up, devastating explosions will wreck your shit for a brief period of time. And once it escalates above increments of 20, there's no going back. If that burn limit reaches 100, it's game over. On one hand, the burn limit seems like a vestigial remnant of arcade-style quarter crunching, an arbitrary mechanic designed to keep the player on the move and not dallying around. Sonic Team already did that with Nights into Dreams. Each course and each level had a time limit of 120 seconds until the dream was over. But Burning Rangers comes loaded with an even better justification. The place is always on fire. It can't burn forever. That's not how fire works, and I don't care if fire doesn't work in space. Of course, the whole place would burn down if you didn't do anything. Putting out fires makes the burn limit go down because that makes sense, and rescuing survivors makes it go down because it's the only way to earn God's cosmic forgiveness. I just love timer mechanics, even though it directly clashes with my desire to explore spaces from top to bottom and really soak in the atmosphere. Timers are at their most extreme in games like Lightning Returns or Dead Rising, where the whole game is on a timer. But tightly controlled timers are also inseparable from games like Jet Set Radio, Outrun, and Crazy Taxi, which not coincidentally are all Sega games and all future parts of this podcast project. Timers demand efficiency, and as one detail-oriented motherfucker, I can easily subscribe to the requests that timers impose. A bit earlier, I said Burning Rangers could be a nice Saturday afternoon to play through once, but my entire argument with this thing, aside from my opinion that the game looks pretty, is it's a game I love playing all the time. For me, Burning Rangers devours 2 or 3 Saturday afternoons a year, every year. At the heart of replaying Burning Rangers is a tricky paradox. The controls demand proficiency that is only generated through repetition. The same is not entirely true of the level design. You see, while Burning Rangers' 4 levels all remain static set pieces and corridors, different doors may be locked, different pathways may be open, survivors move to different places, and surprise bursts of fire pop up at different times. It's effectively impossible to memorize the first 3 levels of the game. It's not procedurally generated on the level of something like Spelunky, and it's not randomly generated like the most irritating roguelikes of its time. Burning Rangers is more like a predecessor to the systems of spontaneity that drive so many games of the modern day. Every level has a password at the end that will generate the same level seed if you ever want to play that exact same level layout over again. Who else in the console space was doing stuff like that in 1998? People kind of freak out when they realize Burning Rangers, a game focused on an efficient exploration, doesn't have a map. A lot of the game is dark, the textures and level features can feel identical if you're unfamiliar with them, and the Saturn's texture resolution and general graininess, especially without a CRT television, can make the entire visual experience a bit overwhelming. Being trapped in a fiery maze with no sense of direction sounds like the pits, and I would agree with you if Burning Rangers truly had no sense of direction. What it has, and what served as the feather in its cap in 1998, is a direct voice navigation system. It has GPS. Chris Pardon, the Burning Rangers navigator, is only a button tap away. Hit that Z button on the controller and Chris will point you in the right direction. Here, listen.
There must be an air duct in the room. Jump up to the opening. Jump up to your right. Enter the door above and to your right.
Chris, unprompted, will also tell you when you're going the wrong way or if you're traveling through an area you've already explored.
You're going backward. Turn back.
This is very cool. At the time, all the reviews mentioned it, and no modern game that I can think of guides the player exactly like this. Navigation is also not entirely accurate on a few occasions. Sometimes when the game can't figure out where you are, Chris will dispense generic advice about remaining focused or stuff like this, instead of directly helping.
Tillis, what are you doing? Proceed with caution. Use your best judgment.
Chris also has survivor blindness and will ask you where the hell you're going if you're trying to locate survivors off the critical path. It's an imperfect system in an imperfect game on an imperfect console, but goddammit, they sure tried. They were doing shit with this. The fire extinguisher, your laser gun thing, is the primary way for the player to interact with their world. Each pocket of red-orange fire will require a few taps of the button to put it out and generate crystals. Or you could hold the button down and get all the fire extinguished at once with a charge shot. But using that much force will obliterate all the crystals. It's a risk and reward system. There are also different types of fire. Blue burns extremely hot and demands a lot of shots. Green arcs and jumps and sometimes acts like a missile as it homes in on the player. Tension here is found in time management. Killing all the fire as quickly as possible negates any chance at getting crystals. And you need those crystals to get a good score and to rescue survivors. Oh, by the way, Burning Rangers is also anime. Trust me, I'm an anime expert. There are 10 minutes of anime cutscenes featuring your choice of either of the game's two protagonists, new recruits to the Burning Rangers. Your first choice and protagonist is Tillis, age 19, no last name. Her parents died in a fire when she was very young, and she wants to join the Burning Rangers so that doesn't happen to anyone else. The other choice is Sho Emabane, 21, who was rescued by a Burning Ranger 10 years ago, which inspired him to become a Burning Ranger too. There are a trio of not immediately playable characters on the Burning Rangers team. The first is the aforementioned Chris Pardon. She's the 24-year-old navigator. The second, at the wizened age of 22, is Lead Phoenix, which is his name in the manual. The voice acting crew calls him Reed Phoenix. Those dang L's and R's, Lead, Reed, or whoever he is, has a neon blue ponytail and is a cool guy. A confident veteran of the team who mistrusts the rampant folly of new members. Finally, there's Big Landman, 35, a cyborg black guy not too dissimilar from the character of Big Bo in Binary Domain. Big's depiction is closer to a father figure and actually less racist than you would expect from a Japanese game made in 1997 featuring a black character. Behind the scenes, in a contemporary interview with the British Sega Saturn magazine, members of Sonic's team explained that Burning Rangers was originally going to feature sequences where the player character, Tillis or Sho, worked together with other members of the Burning Rangers to solve level puzzles. They would complete objectives in tandem and really sell the whole team aspect of the game. The idea couldn't be executed by the time Burning Rangers had to ship, and the concept was dropped. There are still a few sequences where Big or Reed will appear in cutscenes, and there's one part in the final level where you run alongside Big or Lead for about 10 seconds, but none of that teamwork stuff is really in the game. Sure, your fellow Burning Rangers buzz into the intercom with words of encouragement or their own communication with Chris, but from a game design standpoint, there's nothing much for them to really do. And it begs the question, is this really anime if our heroes can't come together for a huge endgame team-up? That question, is this anime, can better be answered by the places Burning Rangers takes its players. The first mission, after a boring training level, is called Fallen Memory, which I think should sound the anime sirens.
Chris to all Rangers. The energy core temperature is reaching dangerous levels. Reports confirm that workers are still trapped inside. Rangers report to the emergency staging area for immediate transport. Sho and Big, take point and contain the spread of the fire for the rescue team.
Roger.
Tillis and Reed, proceed to the control room located underground in basement level number 1.
Roger!
It takes place in a power plant that's in the process of melting down, which should sound the basic nuclear safety sirens. Fallen Memory contains the most industrial, perfunctory, and featureless collection of art assets in the game. The collapsing concrete hallways are a neat parlor trick, but I lost count of the rooms and spaces filled with steel floor grating, exploding gas tanks, and neon green workstations. It sure is a power plant around here. Sonic Team seemed to understand the limitations of the Saturn's polygons and the perils of operating in 3D space all the way back in 1998. The textures are simple, but the lighting is out of this world. It's true that darkness is Burning Ranger's most prominent feature. There certainly wasn't much draw distance, and rationally, most of the lights will be out in a place that is in the process of burning down. But to compensate, Sonic Team pre-baked neon lighting everywhere, all over the game. Shades of neon green and electric blue fill almost every single hallway of the power plant. A wider world, background textures visible through the glass elevator and occasional hallway, hint at a neon purple and teal cave system outside the power plant. Or maybe it's the city's skyline with an alien mothership hovering overhead, blasting spotlights down into the ocean. It's honestly hard to tell what's out there due to the Saturn's texture resolution. Either one could explain the eccentric taste in lighting down here, but honestly, I just believe the art team thought it looked cool. Burning Rangers always tries to look gorgeous when it could look boring. The power plant also exposes one of Burning Ranger's weaknesses, and it's a weakness shared by most 90s 3D platformers. The platforming, the core movement mechanic, isn't especially great. Maybe primitive or nascent would be a better word to describe it. That frailty is exposed in an area a few minutes into the mission, where the player can ascend 3 levels of green pipes, yellow hand railings, and steel girders across 3 floors. Chris calls this area the plant site. Camera controls assigned to L&R triggers on a 90-degree axis, which was common at the time, and there's also a free look button where your stationary character can look around the level from their own point of view. But there's no real way to see what's above or below you unless you start jumping around and taking chances. You need to ascend to the 3rd level, but you're going to bounce off walls and miss jumps a lot, which, as things went in 1998, was all part of learning how to play the game. Angry YouTubers might start calling this bad game design, and maybe it was, but to me it just feels like how games were at the time. Mario 64 got a lot right, so did some of Rare's platformers. It was harder to find on the Saturn and PlayStation, which had more trouble creating room to explore wide open spaces. Midway through the power plant, the power completely goes out and spooky music plays. This comes as a shock because most of the game is absent of any sort of music. A lot of the noise filling the background is ambient and frankly low quality, fire hissing and static humming. You know, the sound of shit burning filtered through a sound channel. The darkness is accompanied not only by unsettling music, but also the fucking Sega Saturn hardware casting green light in real time and an aura around the player character. Wherever you turn, the world is painted in green light, and I think it might be a trick. The world may be all green and it's just lit normally when I get close to it, but it feels real to me. As far as I know, Burning Rangers has a functional flashlight in the 32-bit era. None of this magic, however, really helps you find the glowing red button that turns the power back on. But it's neat. It's neat that the game can do that. It's fun to look at, even if it serves no practical purpose. It's not especially fun when the power plant level turns off the lights a second time. The maze is now larger, with several empty rooms and dead ends amid its collection of empty hallways and burning fires. Sometimes, even after playing through this game a dozen times over a quarter century, I still die at this part and have to burn off a continue. You just have to wander dark hallways until you find the glowing red button. It's not great. The next time you hear music is when a survivor warns you of a mutant plant on the loose. Apparently that's the cause of this meltdown. After wandering through a small cylindrical platforming section, you meet Animoth, a very angry giant tulip flower? It spins around the circular arena, firing off dastardly blue bursts of flame. You can either jump over the fire as it spins, or run clockwise as it spins and avoid the flames that way. After connecting with 5 or 6 charged shots, Animoth drops dead. Despite my claims that Burning Rangers forges its identity through anime, the first level contains almost no anime, literally or metaphorically. The second level doesn't contain much anime either, but we still have to talk about it because it takes place in an undersea research laboratory that is also an amusement park and aquarium. The level is called Silent Blue.
Chris to all Rangers, a fire has been reported at Ocean Park in New Zealand. Cause is unknown. The facility's evacuation system is down. About 30 people are still trapped inside. Our mission is to rescue them. Got it? Roger! Show, Tillis, head for the director's office. You might find the cause of the fire in that sector.
Roger!
The level opens with the player on autopilot swimming through a glass tube of water and popping out of a pool onto dry land. It's meant to foreshadow some swimming we'll be doing later. After that, you're immediately met with polygonally similar structures, more hallways, more small cube-centric rooms, but with much different overlaying art textures. The floor is no longer an industrial shade of green, but rather a series of steel beams over active flowing channels of water. The glass windows outside no longer showcase a cave system, but a blue ocean abyss. As you move on, the hard floors have been replaced by soft carpet, and the footfall sound effects match this shift in surface. The first part of Level 2 looks and feels like touring a modern aquarium. The biggest set piece of this level is the dolphin tank, a massive vertical column of red-tinted water with a live dolphin swimming around inside. The dolphin even talks when you walk up to it.
Tillis, do you see a water tank?
Oh, poor thing. Don't worry, I'll help you.
It looks like the water circulation system has stopped. There must be a control room in this area.
Your objective is to flip a switch and set the dolphin free, which conveniently also opens up a pathway to travel to the next part of the level. Now the context of your mission changes when you learn that more people are here than initially reported, and the researchers may have been working on top-secret evil shit at the depths of the ocean. On the player's end, this means traveling from the aquarium to the research area, a feat accomplished by entering the water tank and swimming through a series of tubes. The swimming controls are awful because while you finally have free access to all three axes of movement without the constraints of a jetpack, you cannot see shit. And the schools of fish swimming around in pockets of air bubbles don't help with visibility much either. It all culminates in a sequence where you reunite with the dolphin you freed earlier. Once again, the dolphin talks, but now Tillis can understand it for some reason. You latch onto that dolphin's dorsal fin, and it takes you where you want to go, which is to blow some charges on the aquarium part of the park, so that part can float to the top of the ocean and magically rescue everyone. Silent Blue ends in a fight against Undulatus, a mechanical piranha fish that looks suspiciously like Gulpo, the evil fish boss in Nights into Dreams. Undulatus swims below the player and breaks the surface of the water to threaten the stability of the scattered platforms you are or were trying to stand on. It also fires missiles. Your strategy remains the same. Fire charged shots at Undulatus whenever you think it's vulnerable, and pray you can hang on to some crystals after inevitably suffering a few direct hits. This fight sucks, but like anything in Burning Rangers that isn't great, it is also outrageously lit and colorful. The boss arena is a neon wonderland that feels like what would happen if SeaWorld celebrated Dia de los Muertos. Afterward, if you're Tillis, she'll ride the dolphin to the surface of the ocean, and I'm not kidding.
Chris, where's Tillis? What happened to her?
Don't worry, she's okay.
There she is!
This is great! Chris, it's okay if I ride on his back for a while, right? Please?
Okay, but only if I can get to ride first.
The third level is called Gravity Zero, and it takes place at a space colony, and goddamn shit, yes, finally, this is where Burning Rangers begins to embrace anime.
This is Quadrant T119, Sector RK404. Crews are working on Firebird. Can you hear me? That's strange. There's no response.
What's the point of waiting here? Let's go investigate.
Let's do this. Okay. Reed and Tillis, I want you two to enter from the main dock. Big and Show, enter from the starboard port.
Roger!
The level opens with a routine check of the lobby, ascending staircases and throwing switches. It moves on to a residential sector complete with communal living space and corridors named after levels from Nights into Dreams. Whenever you walk by glass windows, they will now shatter, pulling the player into the vacuum of space for a few seconds before the emergency shutters drop. Mechanically, this will require the player to boost their jetpack in the opposite direction if they don't want to lose crystals. The keystone of this level is in that communal space, Frozen Bell Square, where you have to find different key cards to open different doors, the ultimate 90s exploration game objective. It gets trickier as the game proceeds when at some point you enter zero gravity. If you thought zero-G would mimic the underwater controls for exploration of 3D space, you would be wrong. Instead, you hold one button to sink, let go of that button to rise, and try to figure out how to manage all of that while negotiating 3D space. Playing Burning Rangers in zero-G is not intuitive. It doesn't control well, and I don't know why it's here. It's just something different, I suppose. Once again, in a Sonic Team game, you're flying, just not in the way you may have wanted to. The level ends in a literal tightrope act. Show or Tillis will find a survivor, a little boy. But your teleportation technology will break, and you'll have to carry him in your arms over steel beams across a burning warehouse. You can't use your fire extinguisher, and there's little margin for error as you walk in straight lines. This section is mercifully brief by the time you find an escape pod for that kid. Communication lines are severed after you send the kid off, but then a mysterious voice is audible, begging you to get the hell out of there.
It's the same thing I saw on the lower level. Why?
Run!
Who is it? Who's there?
The defense systems have been activated! Hurry, get out of here!
Before we can take inventory on that, drum and bass music plays and we're fighting a multi-component assemblage of parts, vaguely shaped like a robot, inside of a purple tunnel with the circuitous dimensions of a funnel cake. This is the boss, and its name is Argoyle. Charge shots blow its pieces off and expose its core, which demand more charge shot direct hits before its pieces reassemble. Like most of the bosses in Burning Rangers, it's a neat concept and a good visual flourish, but it doesn't really work. There's not much of a challenge, at least in the way it was intended. After the battle, communication with your team is still cut off. In its place, Sho or Tillis will hear the voice and see the image of a young woman with long green hair.
Chris, come in. Hey, Big, do you copy me?
Run for your life!
Huh?
What is that? Where did it come from?
We've got trouble. It's absorbing the colony.
It's no good. The transporter's malfunctioning.
Tillis, listen, you've got to get out of there. Tillis, or you'll be trapped inside.
Tillis, come in. Tillis? Tillis!
It's no use. We're losing her signal.
Back on the Burning Ranger spaceship, we learn the space colony is on a collision course with Earth, and we need to get the hell out of this space colony. After that, we wake up in the 4th level, Winged Cradle. Comms are still online, but that voice that warned us before, that mysterious girl, still cautions the player of impending danger.
Chris, come in! I lost her. What's going on out there? I need to get out of here. Watch out! There's that voice again.
The 4th level is split into distinct modules that will test your platforming prowess. It also saturates the hell out of the color spectrum, opening with a sequence featuring a magenta pit of water, pink billowing flames, deep purple wall highlights, and dancing green flames. You then move through a frozen ice blue hallway for no other reason than someone must have thought an electric blue hallway was vital at that particular moment of the game. That leads to a section where, I shit you not, giant bowling balls from Temple of Doom stampede down a tight hallway. The first part of Winged Cradle concludes in an infamous nightmare sequence inconsistent with any part of reality, where the player has to ascend a series of tight, translucent glass beams over a giant pool of lava. The short draw distance of the Sega Saturn's polygons does not help your cause here. This section concludes in a boss fight with a blue crystal. It was intended to force the player into hopping between unbalanced platforms and firing off shots. But really, you can just stand on one platform and blow the thing away without much issue. It takes about 10 seconds. Then finally, we're treated to actual anime.
Who are you?
I am Elia Klein. I'm in the center of the ship.
What's this? Am I really in a spaceship?
At the age of 16, I was infected by an incurable disease. My father, a scientist, wanted to save me, so he created a spaceship equipped with a special hypersleep unit for me and programmed the ship to orbit around Earth. In order to protect me, my father cloned his consciousness into the ship's main computer memory banks. However, after a long period of time, the computer started to adapt. Its programmed logic started to advance very quickly. It absorbed any and all the materials floating in space and created a defensive shield. Recently, a signal was sent to the ship. A cure was discovered on Earth that would help me get well again. This has caused the main computer to carry out its final instructions to bring me back to Earth. But that would mean disaster, because if the ship reaches Earth, all of it would be destroyed. From here, I can do nothing but wait. The ship's defense is almost invincible to any attack from the outside. However, the ship is very vulnerable from the inside. Please, I beg you to destroy this monster.
We learn the voice belongs to Elia Klein. She was infected with an incurable disease when she was 16, and her body was put into stasis in a spaceship. Her father's consciousness was uploaded to the spaceship to protect her. A cure on Earth for Elia's disease has finally been found, and the ship, now corrupted and fucked by the perils of space madness, is on a collision course with Earth to retrieve that cure. We need to destroy the monster fathership controls from the inside and save the Earth from a catastrophic collision. That's right, in 4 short levels, we've gone from putting out fires at a power plant to rescuing the Earth from imminent destruction. And now we're going to play a tunnel shooter called the Cardio Core. navigating the burning ship, that's the name of the Burning Ranger spaceship they use to travel through outer space, navigating that through the missile and debris-laden defense systems of the rogue space colony demands we pilot the ship through a half-oval while maneuvering around blockage, firing your own missiles at garbage, and making sure not to collide with anything and lose all of our crystals like Sonic. If you're having trouble visualizing what that's like, just imagine the special stages from Sonic the Hedgehog 2, only you can kind of move across the y-axis rather than just slide around an oval. Also, it looks terrible. I wouldn't be shocked if this section were pulled from the same code as those special stages in Sonic 3D Blast. In any case, Cardio Core is the same layout every time, and you can kind of game it with a bit of memorization. Mercifully, the entire sequence only lasts 80 seconds. And finally, it's time for the last sequence of the game. All of the Rangers reunite for a brief trip through the Hell Void, which it's not called that, but I can't imagine another label for the collection of platforms, translucent monsters, and plant-like door guardians before we reach Iria's stasis capsule. That leads to a mini-boss encounter with a series of lasers that spin around a room before giving way to the final boss, who, as best I can tell, has no name. It is hard as hell, though, demanding the player neutralize 2 respawning shields before doing any damage, all the while dancing through a series of projectiles and various "the floor is lava" challenges. It's pretty tough, but the drum and bass remix of the Burning Rangers theme should be enough to see most players through to safety. And that's it. After it's over, you're treated to an anime cutscene. The space colony seems to explode before the burning ship can rescue either of our player characters. The surviving Rangers are angry and sad. Lead slams his fist against the controls, and just when all hope is lost, Tillis or Sho will appear in the teleport bay. If you're Tillis, she'll cry and think of the Burning Rangers as her family and their safety and comfort as her home. If you're Sho, tough guy Lead Phoenix will start crying, and Sho will tell him to chill out. And that's it, credits. It's a short game, but there are a few novel reasons to bring players back for a few more rounds. Other than the door and survivor randomization, which we've already talked about, there are a total of 108 unique survivors scattered across the first 3 levels. And the game even has a built-in checklist complete with unique portraits for each person. The survivors will also send you email.
You've got mail from some of the survivors you've rescued.
Thanking the player or relaying some backstory. Most of the members of Sonic Team, the developer, also appear as survivors, and their emails will either contain concept art or secret codes, which I'll get into shortly. 2 of the survivors randomly are Elliot Edwards and Clarice Sinclair, the 2 kids from Nights into Dreams. You can only rescue up to 10 or 12 survivors per round, so filling out that complete list, not to mention getting lucky with the level seeds, can take quite a while if you're going for 100% completion. Especially so if you're going for S ranks across the board. Remember, Burning Rangers is from a time before Christ where we only got a few games a year and played the holy shit out of those games we did have. It used to make sense to do stuff like this. Rescuing survivors and receiving email from them was an extension of the A-Life system that Sonic Team developed for Nights into Dreams. A-Life meant artificial life. In Nights, it was an undocumented passive minigame inside the levels where, every time you would play, you would also manage a breeding system between little elf guys. That A-Life system would eventually make another appearance in Sonic Adventure, with chows, which felt like a natural extension of the systems built in Nights. Still, Burning Ranger's attempt at A-Life made a nice go of it. Where else could 108 people send you email in a video game in 1998?
There's mail waiting for you.
Those secret codes from Sonic Team members are used in the game's password screen. Each one will open up Chris, Big, and Lead, and even Iria as playable characters across the game's 4 levels. There are some caveats to this. Every character plays identically, Chris's navigation help will be absent, and music just replays the Burning Rangers theme song over and over. There are also 0 story elements to support these characters, but it's neat. It's cool that Sonic Team, even with a rushed production, made space for bonuses like this. Plus, it suggests that the mystery disease stasis sleeping girl of destiny, Iria Klein, eventually became a Burning Ranger, too. And these days, of course, you can just look all these codes up on GameFAQs. This is neither here nor there, but a facet of Burning Rangers I've always enjoyed are its theme songs. Not only does it have 2, Angels with Burning Hearts and We Are Burning Rangers, but composition and vocal duties for the latter are handled by Takanobu Mitsuyoshi. If you don't recognize that name, other than I just probably pronounced it wrong, that's fine, but you may have heard his voice before.
Rolling Stone!
He's the guy who sang on the good Daytona USA songs like Let's Go Away and Sky High. We Are Burning Rangers, his song here, also features some verses rapped by someone else and includes the lyrics, "To the next phase and to the next stage, giving nightmares like Wes Crave. So violators, you best make your way, for real troopers have a future to save."
To the next phase and to the next stage. Giving nightmares like Wes Crave. So violators, you best make way for real troopers have a future to save.
Giving nightmares like Wes Crave is an all-timer, even if it's plagiarizing the song Shadowboxin' by the Wu-Tang Clan's GZA. Burning Rangers has never been re-released. Complete in-box copies of the game for Sega Saturn are nearly $600. Importing a copy from Japan is much cheaper, it's like $50, but you'll miss out on all the navigation stuff unless, of course, you understand Japanese. Burning Rangers has been referenced in Sonic Pinball Party for the Game Boy Advance and Phantasy Star Online 2 for whatever the hell that's on. Improbably, 2012's Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed had a dedicated Burning Rangers race course.
Get ready. 3, 2, 1, go!
Chris to all Rangers, a fire has been reported at Ocean Park, New Zealand. Cause is unknown.
It takes place in the second level of the game, the underwater amusement park and research center. Chris is even on the mic as you play the course, repeating lines from the game while Burning Rangers music plays. That's pretty crazy, but Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed also featured courses from Panzer Dragoon and Skies of Arcadia, which is why that game is my favorite kart racer of all time. Anyway, your best bet to enjoy Burning Rangers in modern times is, of course, to emulate it, or burn it, or spend a bunch of money on an optical drive emulator for a Sega Saturn. I continue to play Burning Rangers with alarming regularity, and almost always as an answer to the question I asked when I opened this segment. I like to watch it move, and I continue to be astonished at how it was all made possible on the Sega Saturn. None of this should have been allowed to happen, and yet here it is. Like Panzer Dragoon Saga and Panzer Dragoon Zwei, Burning Rangers is a mature product on a platform that never reached maturity and barely entered adolescence. The Saturn as a console was effectively over well before it turned 3 years old. The PlayStation 5 released at the end of 2020, and I'm recording this at the end of 2023. Can you imagine if that console's service life ended last winter? Burning Rangers has me under its spell. To play it efficiently is to pursue perfection, and few modern games can compel me into playing them again and again at different points in my life. I don't quite understand my relationship with this game. Burning Rangers is a flawed product on a doomed system, but maybe that's why I keep trying to conquer its challenges. The randomized elements, completing that survivor list every time my Sega Saturn save battery dies, and just watching it operate is enough to keep me coming back around. In the absence of any further rationale, please allow me to quote more lyrics from We Are Burning Rangers. Hyper, Burning Rangers, wow, don't lose your hope now. No, that's not how I'm going to end this. Instead, here is a paragraph from Kamimi the Game-Eating She-Monster's piece on Burning Rangers, found at KamimiTheGameEatingShe-Monster.com. She is a great writer with exceptional taste in games, and she's much more articulate than I am with this particular game. Here's what she said. Of course, as hard as Burning Rangers wants you to believe that you're stuck in the middle of an anything goes catastrophe, it's not really random. The limitations of the hardware, and no doubt the budget too, mean there are only certain specific floors that will collapse under your feet, or particular walls that will disintegrate into outer space before the shields come down. But even when you've played to the point where you know every variant and every trick the game can throw at you, you still have no way of knowing what path you'll have to take or where you need to check for survivors. That is the magic of Burning Rangers. No game has tried so hard, or come so close, to making every time feel as dangerous and exhilarating as the first time.
Hello. Hi.
Hey, Chris, have you ever played Burning Rangers?
No.
All right.
Is that it?
If you want it to be.
I can't even picture Burning Rangers in my head.
Do you think after listening to this, you will play Burning Rangers?
Is it on Sega Saturn?
It is.
No, I've already given you the Sega Saturn back. So I'll never play it.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Unless you compelled me to play it by this wonderful podcast, but I haven't heard the wonderful podcast yet, so I can't actually attest to the fact that it is wonderful, but I sure do hope it is.
Damn, time paradox.
Damn.
Next time on Infinite Perfect.
Welcome to the fantasy zone. Get ready.
Keep people kind of freak out when Chris is popping out. Like pop goes the weasel.
I'm trying to get in between sentences.
No, it's fine.
I was just watching the football game. I'm going to go say hello to...
All right, I'll be in here talking. That frailty is... I mean, if you've got other shit that this is like... I think I'm halfway done.
I'm fine. I was just over here watching the football game. But the kids are like, basement. We go to the basement. We go to the basement.
I mean, if you want to cut here and finish it later, it's...
Okay, let's do that.
Okay.
Next time on Infinite...
Nope, fucked it up.
I don't even really... I can't...
Are you sure that I'm talking into the recording microphone now?
Yes, you are. I can see the waveform.
Are you sure it's not your microphone that it's picking me up?
No, it's not.
Can I call my producer in here?
Yes.
We're getting Dr. Dre to produce these beats.
No, it's good now.
The final reason why Burning Rangers was made, and this is just my own hypothesis as opposed to information, the old magazine interviews I tore through. That sentence is fucked up.
Welcome to Infinity Perfect, a period...
That's not how you pronounce that word.
Infinite Perfect.
I can't hear her.
Let me talk to my producer, Chris.
Chris,
There you go.
the hell's going on here?
It's my fault. You're good.
Okay.
Playtime's over!